Hey everyone, Shar here, and welcome to the Blonde and Strong podcast. This is a podcast of strength and empowerment, with each episode dedicated to helping our listeners improve their health, well-being, to learn, grow, and unlock their strength from the inside out. So I felt called to create this podcast to give a platform to inspirational guests to share their knowledge, experience, strength, and hope in order to empower others, to prove it's possible not only to survive, but to thrive. So this is done through open, honest, unfiltered conversations, a safe space for people to be raw and powerful through their vulnerability without shame or judgment. So no topic is off limits as long as it has the intention of empowering our listeners. Our growth is our own responsibility and no one can do the work for us, but I truly believe we're stronger together. So sit back and relax. We're about to dive in deep. Come dive in deep with us. Today, we have a very special lockdown episode, and I couldn't think of anybody better to ask on as my guest than Lindsay Bruce, who is owner and founder of Elite Performance. He's an online mindset coach. He also specializes in coaching men to help them achieve their greatest success and peak performance. Founder of the Modern Warrior program, which is aimed mainly at men over 30. Is that right, Lindsay?
That's correct.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on today because with the announcement just happening yesterday about lockdown, I think it's really important for people to have a little bit of a reevaluation and a reset and start to really view their own mindsets around the whole lockdown situation. I think people have really struggled with it over the last 6 months or so that we've been dealing with it on and off in its various forms around the whole country and around the world, really, for that matter. Yeah. So that's going to be the focus today, a big bad lockdown special. But before we dive into all of that goodness, we're going to start off with our little game of this or that, which I do with everybody, so you're not getting out of it.
I am so glad that I don't know any of these questions as well, by the way, because
you haven't even bothered to listen to my podcast.
I think I actually did listen to one of them, but I forgot all the questions, so it's probably a good thing I don't know what's going to be asked, because it would ruin it to have prepared answers for this. So I wait in anticipation.
I'm just giving you shit, Lindsay.
Well, no change.
Okay, are you ready? So you can't overthink these. These are like first thing that comes to mind. Okay, ready?
Absolutely.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Phone call or text?
Phone call.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Ooh, controversial. I'm not too sure I expected you to say that.
I know.
I know you do know you like a good cup of tea, but
love a good cup of tea.
I know. City or countryside?
Countryside.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Connection or isolation?
Can't choose both. That's a difficult one. But connection.
Which one makes you feel more alive?
Connection. Yeah.
Bath or shower?
Shower.
IQ or EQ?
IQ.
Love or money?
Love.
Depth or width?
Sorry?
Depth or width?
What are we talking about here?
I trust you to take it
to
that level. Depth or width of connection?
I get it. Yeah, I'm only giving you shit, Shaw.
And then would you rather be right or happy?
Happy.
Okay. I mean, that's it.
Is that it? Did I pass? Did I actually pass or fail?
I don't think there's no pass or fail, is there? There's no right or wrong. It's just who you are.
So the tea thing, just to clarify, I am drinking coffee, my second cup of which is the second of two attempts of this cup of coffee, because I just, as you know, spilt the last cup everywhere before the podcast.
I know. We're a couple of minutes late getting started today.
Yeah.
Lindsay had a minor coffee incident.
Yeah, it was like a tsunami of coffee from the cup. Anyway, tea. I mean, I don't know if it's just a Scottish thing, but we were brought up in tea. Tea is the stuff. That is like, given the choice between both, if I had to survive in one and one only, it would be tea all day long. we had tea in our baby bottles when we were just babies, obviously. My mum gave us tea, milky tea.
I have like the weirdest
Tea's a
mental
lifelong
image of you, like with your little baby bottle now full of tea.
I'm serious, full of tea.
It's cute because you get your daughter to make you your
Yeah.
tea now, don't you, all the time?
Exactly, yeah. She makes a good cup, actually, yeah. It's been
After like some serious tuition.
But generally speaking, coffee morning, tea late afternoon onwards.
Yeah, no, I get that. I used to love tea when I was younger, and I just no, I'm a coffee lover. I'm probably never gonna like end up being a massive tea drinker, but these are the things that are important in life during lockdown. Do you like tea?
Very much an army thing. It's like they say in what film is that in the game when they say the British Empire was built on cups of tea. Everything happens after a cup of tea. That is,
So what would you call a cup of tea? Because I've heard this, like, well, what would you call it?
Well, I did see, I don't know if it was a piss take. There was this video going around a while back. I forget who posted it, but it was about an American woman and her daughter giving a demo on how to make a cup of tea. And
oh my God, I've seen it.
And Americans don't have a fucking clue how to make tea. So there's a set way in which a perfect cup of tea is made. So it goes like tea bag in, water, then milk, mixed to the preferred color of choice, tea bag out, stir. If you take sugar, obviously that would have to go in before the milk because otherwise you get sugar in the bottom.
Yeah.
So that is the secret to making the perfect cup of tea.
I've seen that video, by the way.
Yeah.
And what that woman does to that cup of tea.
I don't know if it's actually serious though. I couldn't take that serious.
It's literally a crime. And I hope it's a piss take, because if it's not, it's just giving every American on the planet a bad name.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So obviously today is our lockdown special. And I think we felt really called to make this the topic of the session today, of the podcast today, because this is now something that's been impacting everybody's lives for more than 6 months. And I think people have really, really struggled with lockdown. I think there's some people have really thrived through it. But a lot of people have really, really struggled. And there's been a lot of real pain points for people throughout this whole process that lockdown brings, which I think is important for us to talk about and see if there's any way that we can give people a little bit of strength and hope on how to kind of survive the next 4 weeks that we know of. But that could be extended. And of course, there may be times where this happens again throughout the next 12 months. We just don't know what this is going to look like. So I think, like with everything, one of the biggest issues is that there's been a lot of uncertainty around the virus and how it's going to impact everybody's lives. And we're kind of a little along for the ride at the moment.
Yeah.
What I didn't mention to everybody in your little intro there, Lindsay, is that not only are you a mindset coach, I'd say you're a lifestyle and mindset coach. You help people not only with their physical fitness and training, their nutrition, their stress, their mental fitness and their mindset, and being able to be more successful and achieve like their full potential in life. Mm-hmm. And in your background, you are a former Special Forces soldier, and you were a professional bodybuilder. Like your whole life has really been spent reaching the pinnacle of everything that you do, right? So starting in the Army, working your way through and making it all the way to that top level in the SAS. Then when you went into the fitness industry, again, it was getting to competitive bodybuilding level and winning competitions, starting your own gym, which, by the way, if anyone is anywhere near Hereford, even within an hour's drive, I would recommend heading over to Elite Performance, because it is an epic mega facility. It has everything in it. It's incredible. It actually is, it's beautiful. I wish I lived closer, because I would definitely train there. But this has obviously been it will have had a huge impact on you and your business, because as a gym owner, and someone who trains people online, there must have been a huge amount of pivoting and adapting and adjusting that's had to happen for you. How has that impacted you personally and professionally?
Well, I'll start by saying this. It's like with anything, when you think about the way that people in general have responded to this whole situation, you're going to have two camps. In one camp, you're going to have those who have been very much thinking reactively, staying in the mode of the victim. And those types of people tend to focus only on what's missing, what's wrong, and what's not fair, for example. And those are the types of people who would have self-destructed typically through this whole lockdown and thereafter going into a second lockdown. Then you've got those who choose to go the other route, which is what can I take from this? What can I extract from a negative situation and actually use to my advantage and see it as an opportunity rather than something that's not fair or something that's essentially a disadvantaged situation, right? So out of that, you've got a generalized one or the other, the way that people have handled this. Some people have thrived, some people have barely survived.
Mhm.
And when it comes to business, I've seen a massive contrast in many fitness orientated professionals. I use the word professionals very lightly, by the way, because I have seen some very unprofessional examples of this as well. And that might not be any fault of their own. They might just not know how. So if someone doesn't know a better way, they just don't know how to, some people need to be told that there's a better way. If someone's stuck in a way of thinking, and they have been for some time, and their environment dictates that, and they're surrounding themselves with situations and people that is essentially rich in negativity, then they're going to become a product of that environment, and that's going to spill out into their lives. So when you think about fitness professionals or any business owner really, but let's talk about fitness professionals because that's the field that I'm in. I know those who have pivoted greatly from this and used the time to go from, let's say, if they're a gym owner or studio owner, they might be sick of the hustle and bustle of dealing with a bricks and mortar business every single day. And it might just become a bit of an epiphany for them because they might get to a stage where they think, well, my gym's not open. What else can I do? So they look for opportunity in that situation. And those ones have successfully pivoted online, whether that be to manage their physical customers from their gym and look after them through a lockdown, which, let's face it, everyone has needed greatly more than ever. And they've also implemented other things that have started maybe an online coaching business. So I pivoted that time, and I actually focused more on my online stuff went from the first lockdown and used that time wisely to then grow that, whilst the other side of my business, the physical side of my business, the gym, was just being looked after. My clients and customers were being looked after through lockdown. As a result of that, we thrived afterwards, and we will again, no doubt. And I've seen some examples of people just spouting all sorts of crap online about what's not fair. This is bullshit. Gyms should be open. And they channel themselves into a very one-dimensional way of thinking. So if someone is a personal trainer in a gym, they can't see anything left or right of that situation. So instead of adapting to the new situation, which is you don't have a gym to train in fact, you can't even train groups of people outside, then what are you going to do then? Because at the end of the day, just because the gym's not open doesn't mean to say that people stop needing help. In fact, it means the very opposite. They need more help.
Exactly.
So how it's affected me, I would say, to answer the question, is that I've taken this whole situation as an opportunity, and I've seen some things as an absolute gift. So on a personal level, I spent more time with my kids. I had time to decompress. I had time to reset the dials and really, really take a zoom out of my life and think, what do I actually want from all this? What's missing? What can be improved? And you can really do a bit of a dissection on everything, business and personal life, and then reorganize things to get your ducks back in line. Excuse me about that phone call. I do dictate that the phone must be answered within 2 rings, so they've failed.
Uh-oh.
That's all right. Someone's getting a bollocking. So I think it's what you make of it, and that's how you view situations. You've known me a long time, Shar.
Yeah.
And it's about not what the situation is, but how you respond to a situation, how you react. You've got a choice in that.
Yeah, absolutely. That. I mean, exactly what you're saying there. The way I view that, to kind of like really sum it up, you were talking very much about people being in like two camps. You know, you've got that like victim mindset camp, or the people that are just like, you know, I'm going to look for the opportunity in this. And the little phrase that I've coined around that is, there's people who believe that things are happening to them, and people who believe that things are happening for them.
Absolutely.
And the people that believe that everything is happening to them, they take it personally, like a personal like vendetta. It's like a personal attack, you know, but like coronavirus isn't a personal attack on one person or one business. This is a global attack, you know, like this is happening to everybody. We may not all be in the same boat. We all have different circumstances, but we are all definitely weathering the same storm, you know, and very much like you said, it's how we deal with that. It's how we approach that. And if we could even help one person change their view from this is happening to me to actually, how could this be working for me? Like,
Absolutely.
how can I change that narrative? Like, we get to write our own narrative, right? And like you were saying, it's not necessarily about the situation, it's how we respond to it. But I think there's a level of acceptance that needs to happen before people can respond positively. You know, like the reality of it is we are going into a lockdown as of, you know, 0001 on when, you know, Thursday. That's it. So Wednesday night, a minute after midnight, we are again in 4 weeks of lockdown. Until you can fully accept that without any real emotion attached to it, like this is just the situation, this is what's I've been presented with, like until you can kind of find a little bit of just neutrality and acceptance of that, you're going to keep fighting with yourself, never mind everyone else. You know, you're going to keep like, oh, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to stay in? Why this is going to look, this is impacting everyone. It's impacted me. It's impacted my job and how I earn money. But very much like you said, I think you and I are friends, but part of that is because we have a very similar mindset and approach to life. And I think both of us choose to surround ourselves with people that think in a similar way and drive us to be better. That's just how we do things. But again, that doesn't make other people wrong and us right. I just think we're all very different individuals. I know when I was younger, I used to spend a lot of time feeling like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to go through this? Like, why do I keep having to deal with all of these things? Nobody else. And all I got from that was really tired. I got really tired, really drained, never found any real peace. There was never any resolution. Like my situation didn't get better with me thinking that way. And it wasn't until I found a level of kind of acceptance and then took control of what I actually had control over and started making changes from that place, you know, and started approaching things from that place. I think it's one of the things that cropped up to me when I was thinking about this, when the announcement was made about us going back into lockdown, is like you, I've seen on social media, lots and lots of people really unhappy about it. And I get it. I fucking get it. I completely get it. You know, like I don't particularly want to be locked in my house either.
Well, none of us do we?
I love freedom. I love the feeling of freedom. I love to be able to go and do what I want. I love to be able to go and have my dance classes and go to the gym and go for my walks and go and see my family and my friends. And that's not on the cards for 4 weeks. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean, like, just because the government has put a restriction on where I can go and when, that doesn't mean I'm powerless. The government haven't been able to tell me what my day is going to look like for those 28 days. I have complete and total 100% control over what my day looks like every single day over that 28-day period. Like, Boris didn't announce and say, right, you can't get up at 6:30 in the morning. You're not allowed to meditate. You're not allowed to
Yeah,
train at home. You're not allowed to eat well. You're not allowed to sit in front of the TV eating Cheetos in your underpants. Like, I can do whatever the fuck I want
yeah.
in my house
And
and
it's
with.
up to you how you do that. I mean, this is the thing, and this is what people fail to understand. And something I want to talk about in a second, which is about how to analyze how people think in general, the ones that are maybe not thinking the best way. We all have one thing, and that is a choice in how we respond to situations. Now, it is easier said than done. There are some people going through real drama, and they have got some real uncertain times. It could be financial, it could be family orientated, it could be health. Some people are worse off than us. So I don't like to come across like it's dead easy just to think in a more positive fashion, because it's not all about that. It's not all about just think positive. That's just bullshit, right? Because you have to understand what goes into creating that better mindset in a more positive fashion. And the only way you're going to do that is to understand what comprises the framework that goes into that. So it's a bit like, you and I come from the fitness industry pretty much as a strong part of our background. And we've met so many people in the past that are struggling with their health from a physical standpoint. And a lot of people are frustrated because they go through this sort of what do you call it? The yo-yo style dieting of a bit of a success followed by a large portion of failure, and then they repeat that and over again over the years. They don't actually move forward or get any better. They just get more frustrated and more consumed by their feeling of failure all the time. And a lot of the time, it comes down to lack of education because they don't really understand how the biochemistry works within the body. So they don't understand nutrition, they don't understand training, they don't understand energy balance and basic things like that. That's why they hire coaches like us to then say, this is in a very, very simple terms way of explaining this. This is how your body acts in these situations. This is how you can improve it, or this is why you're not improving it at the moment. So if you think about mindset, a lot of people are frustrated about the way they think and the way they feel, and that tends to just get worse naturally, not better. It doesn't gradually just work itself out. 9 times out of 10, if someone's stuck in a certain thought pattern, it's so ingrained from a young age, and if they're not breaking away from an environment, and the environment either gets worse or they stick in that same environment, they stick with those same belief systems and those same behavioral patterns, it only gradually gets worse because it's basically fermenting in a way that it's just bad energy consistently every day. So until you understand why you're thinking the way you are, that's the only way you're going to solve how to fix it. It's a bit like popping the hood in your car. If you're not a mechanic, you're just going to look at it like a whole load of metal and think, what the fuck is that? What does that do? That's what I do. I don't have a clue about shit like that. So that's why I hire a mechanic, because I couldn't fix my own car, right? But a mechanic will go in and they'll just go, this is exactly what's wrong with it, diagnostics test, and they'll be able to suss out within, and they'll get your car running again. Same with the body, same with dieting, same with training. And it's the same with mindset. If you don't understand why you do the things you do, you haven't got a hope in hell of just miraculously fixing that.
So this has always been my, so do you think that really comes down to, like your core beliefs, your limiting beliefs and your belief system? Do you think that is really what drives that mindset, why you currently make the choices that you make? And then also, is that then the key, that bottom up approach to being able to change it and fix it?
Yeah, everything comes back to the meaning that you give every situation in life. So I teach this very simple method of understanding why you make decisions that you make. So if someone's fat, I don't make no apologies, by the way, of using that terminology, because that is the reality of it. If someone is overweight, they're fat, they've got too much body fat, they want to be slimmer, they want to be in better shape, they want to be healthier, you find that there's just massive problem with something called an inner conflict. Inner conflict is something, I remember when I first really had this explained to me years ago, it really made the penny drop, because it was something that in my own life I could really, really connect with, because there were certain things I wasn't really happy with. There were certain things I was confused about, whether it be my identity, my belief systems, where I wanted to take my life, why I wasn't taking certain action and things I wanted to do, and I was procrastinating a lot, and why I was doing things that I maybe shouldn't be doing. And when I explain this to my clients, they also have a penny drop moment, and there's something called an inner conflict. All that simply is that if you have, so I get them to write 2 lists, right? So I typically get a client to write 2 lists, and on one side, one list will be, how do you like to feel? What's the emotions you like to have? Or what would you like to feel like? So what is your place of happiness? So they'll say, well, I'd like to feel healthier. So we say, okay, so you want to feel healthy. I say, I want to feel happy. I want to feel proud of my body. I want to feel content. I want to feel energized. So you've got all these very positive emotional states coming out that are a wish list essentially of how you would like to feel on a daily basis. And then you say, well, okay, how don't you like to feel? Because everyone knows what they don't want, right? So that's the other fucking problem as well. People tend to focus on what they don't want, what's missing, and then the law of attraction, the way it works is that they end up getting more of that, like a boomerang effect of more of what the shit they don't want, because they're focused on it all the time. So therefore, going back to this list, you've got the list of things that are typically the what I call the good set of values, which are your towards values, right? The ones that you want to steer towards and gravitate towards are the things that make you happy, healthy, and all the rest of it. So then you've got this other list of the things that you don't want. So how don't you like to feel? How do you feel now? And typically they say, well, I feel like I'm fat. I feel like I'm unhealthy. I feel lazy. I feel stressed. I feel depressed. So you get this whole list of negative emotions, and that tends to always be the longest list as well, by the way. So you look at these 2 lists and you go, okay, so here are the things that you would like. Here are the things that you really don't like. So let's look in the middle at the behavior patterns, at how you're behaving right now. So if you know that eating healthy versus eating shit is going to elicit a response that goes towards one of those lists. So if you have a choice between eating a good, solid, healthy meal that's full of rich in vitamins and minerals and high in protein, and then you've got another plate of food, which is a Big Mac and fries or chocolates, right? They'll say, okay, typically.
I can't see the video. I'm holding up an M&S Millionaire Bites tub.
That looks nice, by the way.
I ate the good food first, just so you know.
So you've got these two lists, these 2 set points. And then you've got the decision in the middle, and you say, well, okay, so if you're given these 2 choices, which one do you typically choose? Or the chocolates you've just held up, if that's someone who's got a sweet tooth, they're overweight because they eat too much shit, and you hold that in front of them and say, what's the chances of you taking one of these and eating it versus putting it away and going for a stick of broccoli, right? So the chances are, in fact, pretty much all the time is the situation where they'll go, well, I'll do that thing that's bad for me. I'll choose the thing that I know is bad for me. So you've got these values that you want to go towards, these values you want to steer away from, but every single decision you make is going to feed the bad list, and it's starving the good values, the towards values. So you think, well, that's what's called an inner conflict, because you're doing all the shit that you shouldn't be doing that's feeding all these emotions that you really don't want.
Absolutely.
And that's fucked up. And that's what people can't understand. And then they think, well, you've heard the whole situation of motivation, right? Oh, to train, I need to be motivated. To eat the best food, I need to be motivated. And then someone says, well, you don't need motivation, you just need discipline. And then begs the question, well, how the hell do I get discipline? Because that's motivation to get discipline in itself. So it's not the best answer to give someone who's struggling, because they go, well, yeah, I get that. I know I need discipline, but how do I achieve discipline? And it all comes back to understanding what you want from life. Where do you really want to be? You have to have that North Star, that aiming point, and you need to have the mechanics going into the practices on a daily basis that can be consistent and have it simplified enough for you with an external form of accountability. That's what's going to get them there.
It's really funny you should say that, because one of the questions I ask myself now on a daily basis in order to keep me on my track and making choices that really are for my greater good is, how committed am I to my elevated self?
Yeah.
How committed am I to becoming the best version of me?
Absolutely, yeah.
If I'm going to write that list of how I want to feel, of how I want to feel and how I don't want to feel, how committed am I to feeling that way? And how committed am I to making the decisions I need to make to feel that way? And every time I'm faced with a choice You know, and let's be really fair about this. Like, I actually posted something out about this the other day. As soon as you actually make a firmly rooted decision in how you want to feel, I can guarantee you the universe will give you ample opportunities right in front of you within the next minute, hours, and days to practice making those choices. So the second you decide you want to feel healthier, or you want to lose weight, or you want to eat better, or you want to leave a toxic relationship, or you don't want, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what that feeling is or that goal that you have is. The second you make a decision that that is truly what you want, you will be given the opportunity to prove how bad you want that. And for me, I just like, I have had to have that be a daily question for myself. I would consider myself a highly disciplined person by nature anyway. Like, very much like you, if I want something, I will commit to getting it, and I will get my head down and I'll do whatever I have to. Like, I didn't have an issue eating a particular way to achieve a certain goal, or training so many times a week, you know, and pushing myself to those. I actually enjoy that process most of the time, you know, like, so I don't really have an issue with that. However, where I fall short sometimes can be in more like emotional areas, making certain decisions that have emotional drivers, you know. And for me, my fitness and my nutrition, I don't have a huge, those aren't massively emotionally driven for me, because they're a bit more of like the core of who I am. I've always kind of done that, and I find that a little bit easier. But if it's something that I have a lot of emotional attachment to, where I've maybe made choices that have been keeping me on that list of how I don't want to feel, usually I believe that, for me, I've just found that comes from more like limiting beliefs, maybe not believing I deserve it, maybe not believing it's possible because I've never seen it before or never felt it before, or, you know, whatever that might be that's been keeping me held back. I have to ask myself that question, like, how committed am I to my elevated self, and am I going to make a different choice today?
And a lot of the time as well, there's a massive issue with identity as well. This is something that I had to get a real handle on myself multiple times in my life. Because the thing is, whatever your goal is, you have to almost change your identity. In some ways, it's not like being a chameleon and having this split personality or multiple personality syndrome. It's about creating the identity that will gravitate you towards that, living that life of that person. And this is what's so important with any goal setting procedure. Whatever you want to achieve in life, the reason to do it has to be big enough. So you have to have a really, really good reason to do it, because otherwise the chances of you going towards something that's pleasure-based, if it's not a big enough reason, you'll subconsciously hold yourself back. So really you need to find the reason why. So something I ask my clients a lot is, like, when they come on board, like I had a client last week, and, you know, this is after like bought and paid for the program, spent a considerable amount of money to be coached for the next several months. And it wasn't until the something I call the lock and load session, which is pretty much the onboarding process. So when we go through some goal setting, and I go through this sort of mini life audit with my clients, and one of the first things I say is, what do you want from this? What do you, because this is something that a lot of coaches get wrong, especially young coaches who are in the fitness industry, in that sort of fitnessy type abs crew, you know, the Instagram must have abs all the time kind of crowd. They assume that everyone wants a six pack. So they have cookie cutting approaches to everyone. This is how you get a six pack. Some people just don't want to live with it. They don't want to have a six pack. That's not necessarily going to make you happy. Yeah, it looks pretty cool, but I mean, that's not what people want. It's very superficial. It's very temporary a lot of the time. So when I say to clients, what do you really want? Because this is the most important thing. Until you figure out what you want and then get absolute dialed in clarity with that picture in your head, and then, you know, adopting that new identity of that person now, that's going to force those habits on a daily basis to create that person. You know, it's like Tony Robbins once said. He said, I wasn't born this way. I created this motherfucker. And that's so true. He wasn't born as Tony Robbins, who's this fucking international motivational speaker guy. He had to create that person. And it's the same with all of us. We're not born the way that we are now. and that will always change and evolve. But we have to create that identity early on in order to adopt the habits and life that that person will essentially be living by. Because if you want to look like an athlete, you have to live like an athlete. Now, if you want to be a competitive bodybuilder who's got like tissue paper skin, should I say, on stage, then that takes an extreme amount of habit building, and it takes a very extreme lifestyle. That's not everyone's cup of tea. But whatever you want, if you want to make more money, you have to do the things that are going to generate more income. And I think this is where people go wrong. They don't really have a clear picture in what they actually want. They don't have the identity that then elicits that response to live that way. And then if they don't have that, they can't have any practices in place on a daily basis that's going to force those habits. So therefore, they just become confused. Confusion leads to frustration. Frustration leads to giving up time and time again, which then forms patterns. And people go through this cycle. It's like there's something called a crazy eight. Yeah. And if you think of a figure of eight on its side, you spend a little bit of time spinning your wheels around the one side, and that could be in the short-term based success. And then you go out to the other side and start failing. And it's a case of trying to break out the middle of that crazy eight and getting a balanced shape rather than a fucking, like a roller coaster ride to success and failure and every now and then, because that's just going to build poor belief structures.
Do you think that there's an element then in that whole process of, as you create that identity in your mind, not only being able to very clearly dig down and see what that's going to look like, but also be able to almost feel what that's going to look like before you get there? Like you said, when you've made that list of how you want to feel, and you can create that character and create that identity, to then be able to put yourself into that person and feel how you would feel different. I know there's actual practices for doing that whole like meeting your future self. How would you look? How would you feel? How would you smell? What would your energy be like when you meet yourself like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Like, what does that look like when you've grown into that character and you are that thing, then to be able to actually feel that and feel that now in this present moment. Like, you don't have to achieve all those things to actually feel that way. If you can start feeling like that right now, just because you can tap into that and you know how that's going to be, you'll, like you were saying before, that law of attraction, you're just going to attract more of that in any way.
And it has to be consistent. It's like when you train in the gym. If you want to build big arms or big legs in the gym, you want to get a body you're proud of. That's not something you dip in and out of sometimes, because if you just did that sometimes, you wouldn't actually make any progress. You'd probably go backwards, actually. But if you think about the mind being like a muscle, you have to train it like you would the muscles in your body that you work out in the gym.
Yeah.
That's what you build. You lift weights in the gym, you build true strength because you break the fibers down, they become stronger. Proper nutrition and recovery, then that you build a really, really robust physique that you can be proud of. But if you don't do that with your mind, you're just flitting in and out of these practices, because you get people like seminar junkies, like the seminar junkies we've all met. They go to these events, they go to whoever the flavor of the month is, whoever they follow at the time, they'll go and see live, and they'll read a book, and then they'll switch to something else, and then they'll have a period where they don't do anything. Then they're up and down in this constant savior mode. It's like, please save me from myself, because they don't really get a handle on how they can make profound change with their own lives, because you can only be taken so far, and then you have to do the work yourself. So if you want to, going back to what you were saying a minute ago, Shar, with these visualization exercises, which are really, really effective. But the thing is, if you go to an event, it could be anybody. So let's, again, using the example of Tony Robbins, he does a lot of that stuff at his events. I've been to multiple of his events. You could sit down and do this meditation exercise, which has got visualization based, practices within that. Mm-hmm. And you could feel amazing at the time. You could be like, oh my God, that was such an empowering experience. I went through this thing where you meet your future self, or you write a letter to your future self. And all these things are really, really powerful, right? But there's also the other things. You're not going to do that every day, because it's a guided meditation. It's very much an insight into what can be achieved. But then there's the little building blocks that make up the gaps between. So you might do something like that every now and then, but you have to find something that you can implement into your life on a daily basis that's simple enough to follow, that's got longevity in mind, that becomes part of the fiber of how you live. So if you take something like gratitude journaling, which is something you and I are both a massive fan of, and I can't speak highly enough for this. And a lot of people, if they don't, a lot of people criticize what they don't understand. And they'll look at someone like me and go, you were a fucking badass SAS guy, right? And they think that you're immune to these types of practices because you've obviously just born the way that is required to go and be a special forces soldier. But again, you know, I had to create that guy. Going back to when I was a young guy on SAS selection, I had to adopt the identity of an SAS soldier when I wasn't an SAS soldier yet. And that's absolutely authentically true. I can put my hand on heart and say that's true. I had to adopt the identity early on. When I was a bodybuilder, I had to adopt the identity of a champion bodybuilder who was winning. And that shit was in my mind every single day. When I was doing my cardio in the mornings, I visualized fucking winning. I didn't visualize turning up for the ride and to make new friends. I was always very competitive in that sense. And that obviously worked out quite well for me because I ended up doing exactly what I not every single time. But I tell you what, if I didn't do it, I got close to it. And I did the best I ever could because I had to come back to adopting that identity. And that's the most important thing because a lot of people lack the most basic factor, and that is consistency. And the only way you're going to get consistency is if it suits your lifestyle and it's something that you can implement on a daily basis and do it repeatedly well. That's what builds fortitude long term, not dipping in and out of shit now and then when it's trendy.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's about consistently applying the learning, right? I mean, like you said, you can go and be a course junkie and you can go on a different course every day, every week, every month, whatever. But until you go away and actually apply that learning consistently over an extended period of time and allow it to become a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's just nice knowledge that you've got floating around in your head that's actually not doing you any good. Funnily, it's so funny because I just wrote a post on this and it always sticks in my head. Like people struggle, like, you know, they struggle with their fitness and nutrition goals. You know, they come in, they want to lose weight, they want to, you know, and for them, I think it links back into what you were saying before, you know, when people have a bit of success and then they fail, you know, they do the yo-yo dieting or they're in and out of the gym back, you know, they don't consistently maintain that certain level of fitness or whatever. And a little like that whole concept of habit building and, you know, that belief reinforcement. I think very often people will try things, then they fail at them and they reinforce the fact that it's not achievable.
Yeah.
And so like they go into every new diet and every new training plan with a limiting belief that this isn't going to work.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I'm not actually going to fully 100% commit because also I don't want to do some of the stuff that it's asking me to do. So I'm only going to do what I want and I'm only going to do, you know, like, so a little bit like you were saying, it has to fit your lifestyle, it has to fit you and who you are. You're also going to have to be willing to try stuff that makes you a little bit uncomfortable and that might be slightly outside your comfort zone. But one of the things, you know, like to do something and have it become a part of who you are, where you don't even have to think about it, where it's completely unconscious for your greater good. You have to have consistently done that on a daily basis for years. It's not something that just happens overnight that you just do for like 28 days or that you just do for 12 weeks or that you just, it doesn't, you know, all these kind of like little programs that people jump on board with and they're thinking that that's going to change their life. It might give them a framework to help them start applying it on a consistent basis to change their lives. They might be giving them the best springboard to change their lives from. But that's like you, exactly like you said, that consistently has to be done and applied every single day for a very long extended period of time for that to become a core inherent part of who you are.
You look at this, right? Take this as an example. There's two people who I can think of off the top of my head. There's Johnny Wilkinson, the famous England goal scorer, drop goal scorer and win for England when they won the World Cup. It pains me to use an Englishman as an example of that. I wish there was a Scotsman I could use, but there's not. But anyway, Johnny Wilkinson, awesome athlete. You know, we all know that moment where he won the World Cup for England, right? Mm-hmm. And that was his life made then, because that was his pinnacle moment. If you think of someone like Michael Jordan, you know, scoring a winning basket at a pivotal moment in history, that then wins something that's highly significant.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen because those two athletes practiced some of the time. You know, they were the ones that were the exception. They were the relentless motherfuckers that stayed behind, that put in the extra work. And it was like, so how many times must Michael Jordan have just practiced a 3-point shot? Or Johnny Wilkinson practicing drop goals?
How many times will they have missed it?
It's about, and the first time they did it, it was conscious, right? So the first time you do it, if you ever thrown a basketball at a net, it's hard. Yeah. You know, it's not that easy to get it in the net. Yeah. But it has to be through, you know, hundreds of thousands of times to do that, so that it becomes just like, it's your instinct. It's like such muscle memory involved there. And then when that moment comes where it's everything's riding on it, the world's watching, it's there, right? Now, if you then cross that over to this situation, so to make that relevant right now, people have said to me, the first lockdown happened, second lockdown's happening. Twice I've had this, right? People will message me from a point of deep concern, or, you know, from a good place. And it's really, really nice that they do this. And I've been asked the question so many times. Someone will message me and say, "Are you okay? You know, how are you feeling? You must be really stressed." They obviously don't fucking know me that well, because they realize I don't let shit like this get to me. But they'll say, "Are you okay? How are you feeling about this?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm fine." And some people can't get that. It's like, well, do you know something we don't? It's like, because you know what? All the shit that's going on, most of it's outside my control. I can't do anything about coronavirus. I can't do anything about the government making the decisions they're going to make. I cannot do anything about that personally. But going back to what I said earlier, I can certainly control how I respond and what meaning I give to that situation. So it's all comes down to the meaning. So this is what I was going to say earlier. Just in brief, I've said this in multiple videos in the past, but there's something that's really, really easy to understand. This comes from an NLP model, right? As you know, I'm a practitioner in NLP as well.
Yeah, your rap sheet is long.
So we have our 5 senses. So all day, every day, we have an abundance of information around us. And if we consciously thought of that information, it would be never ending, right? There's just an infinite amount of information constantly around us. And we go into as much detail as we want to with the information that surrounds us. But there's 3 things that we have to do to basically function as human beings. Because there's so much information around us, we have to do 3 things. We delete, we distort, and we generalize. You've probably heard this before, Shah. Mm-hmm. So we delete the vast majority of the information because it's just too overwhelming to think about it all. Yeah. We distort the information and we generalize the information. Once we've done these 3 things, we're left then with a smaller amount of information. Now that varies from person to person and situation to situation. So you find that the more stressed that someone is, they've not deleted, distorted, or generalized enough information. Therefore, they're left with too much. That's why people overthink shit. And they've got all this shit going around their heads at one time, and it makes them overwhelmed and stressed and anxious.
Yeah, that's how I was right before we were going to do the pod. I went out, I had to go out for a walk.
Yeah, but to clear your head. But it's about, you got to purge the mind. But the thing is with that, if you can do these 3 things, you can delete, distort, and generalize enough information and minimize what you're left with. Yeah. Right. You get less overwhelmed. Now, once you're left with this information, which is a shorter list of information, you then have to focus on something. Right. Guys typically can't focus on 2 things at once. We're genetically, we're failures at that. We're genetic failures, but we have to focus on 1 or 2 things. Yeah. Then when we focus on these things, we have to give it a meaning. And whatever meaning you give that dictates your situation. That ultimately dictates your life. So if we can basically reprogram ourselves to filtering down that information and then focusing on something that's going to serve us rather than not serve us, and then give that a really, really good meaning that's positive and valuable to us, that changes your whole state. And your state will then change the way you feel, and how you feel is ultimately your life. It's as simple as that. And that's what people get wrong. They have too much information. They try and focus on too many things at once. They focus on the wrong thing. They give it a meaning that's skewed in the direction they don't want to be in. That's what makes them have a bad mental state and makes them unhappy and unhealthy.
I like that you've simplified it and broken it down like that for people. I think that's really, really important. With that, then, with something like lockdown, with something, if you look at the kind of like pain points that people have been, I feel like everyone has been affected by at least a few of these, if not all of them. When you look at the lockdowns, people have been impacted either financially, through their work, either being placed on furlough, being made redundant, losing their jobs. Some businesses have absolutely thrived and some have completely shut down. And again, that's been usually on some kind of supply and demand or ability to pivot and find the needs of, the changing needs, identifying changing needs and being able to service that. Then there's been like that the part of it where there's isolation and loneliness, where people aren't getting to connect with their families and their friends the way that they would do normally, which then can have like an impact on people's mental fitness, how they're actually feeling, like you were saying, that overwhelm, being overloaded, feeling anxious and out of control, maybe losing a sense, but feeling a bit lost, like a loss of purpose, like you were saying, having that meaning that we apply to things in our lives, a loss of routine and structure. So say you have been put on furlough or you have lost your job, and all of a sudden, everything that that gave you purpose and meaning, like getting up every morning and going to the gym or going to your work and being of service to people, all of a sudden you haven't got that anymore. So I think like everyone has been impacted, if not by all of those things, at least some of them, right?
Yeah.
And that can be a lot to take on board for people. And if you're saying like we have to kind of delete, distort, generalize all of that kind of information, what is the best way of doing that? Being able to kind of, for me personally, the way I've done it is I've tried to stop looking externally as much, where I'm being overloaded and overwhelmed with information.
Yep.
And I've tried to turn my energy and my attention very inwards and looking at what I need to feel okay and what can I do. Because I think one of the biggest things in this kind of a situation where we don't have control over the stuff that's going on around outside of us, like coronavirus, what the government decides we have to do or not do, and if I have a problem with how the government's dealing with it, unless I'm about to start a revolution and go and storm the Capitol, like really, what am I going to do about that?
I'll come with
right?
you.
That doesn't mean that I can't do that. It's just that I choose not to put my energy into that. That's not where
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't believe that my special gift to this planet is to take on central government and make that change. Somebody else was put on the planet to do that, and I will support them in doing that. But that's not what I was put here for. I know that much. So I've just really tried to turn my energy way more internally and figure out, what have I got power over? What have I got control over? What can I focus on to make sure that I'm okay? And you know what? There's been days where I'm like, do you know what? This is bullshit. I'm a little bit stressed out. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. And there's been the odd day I've had to just have a quiet day.
And
I haven't made a big, huge positive stride forward. I've had to just take care of myself that day and accept that today I don't really have that much to give and that much to offer, and I'm going to have to just feel a little quiet and a little bit maybe rest and do something nice for myself and not stress myself out too much. But then when I get up tomorrow, usually if I give myself that space and that rest, then I tend to start having more ideas and more clarity of what I can do next and what steps I can take next. So I've just brought all of my energy a little bit more internally to try and figure out how I can make my life, like you said, more on that list of things that feel good.
Yeah, it's like the mask thing. It's like the oxygen mask in a plane, or it's like money. It's like if it's okay to want money, for example, and you can't help the poor by being one of them. The same thing with the oxygen mask scenario that we've all heard before. When you're on a flight, if you need to put on your oxygen mask, you put your own on first before you do your kids mask, right? Because you can't help them if you're not at your peak state. So if you're trying to contribute to the world, which is obviously one of our human needs, which is to contribute to make us feel fulfilled, if you can't feel that you can be on firing all cylinders at your best to serve other people, then it's counterproductive to what you're doing, because you end up trying to spin your wheels constantly in this quest to do better. But a lot of the time, we just need a day rest, sometimes a week, and it's like, again, it's like building muscle in the gym. You find if you take a couple of days off, you go back stronger and you have a better workout. Because overtraining could be a very counterproductive thing, obviously. And that's the thing as well when it comes to what you were saying a minute ago about focusing more internally because you can't control these things. It's the same. I had this discussion yesterday and this morning as well, actually, about this whole gym closure thing. So we were having to close our gym. So we had options there. So I had a choice. Again, I had a choice. I had a choice to fight that cause and remain open and say, you know what? We're going to stay open through lockdown because we believe that it's wrong that gyms should be closing, which I do stand by that opinion.
Yeah.
That's my belief, that I don't think gyms should close.
I
think they should be classed as essential facilities for people's mental and physical health. And I know that I'm not alone in thinking that. But then I thought, okay, and I had a good chat with a friend of mine who owns a gym as well down in Bristol. And we both were on the same page with this. We discussed this, and we brainstormed the options. And I said, you know what? Is it not better focusing your energy on how you can actually help people through it rather than trying to prevent it? That is, let's face it, going back to your scenario about if you're going to start a revolution, fine. If that's your mission in life, that's your goal, best of luck to you. And I respect that, whoever does do these great things. But at the same time, I think it would be counterproductive in a lot of ways trying to do that, because one, it's going to take a hell of a lot of energy. It's going to cause a lot of stress. It's going to cause more uncertainty with other people and create a load of negative energy that's not really needed, and probably not going to end up with the result that we want anyway. Have a load of fines, a load of penalties, and then having to pay those. If we can't pay them, then we go out of business. And then no one's got the gym to train in anyway. So it's counterproductive. So it's about doing a bit of an analysis and thinking, okay, option one, option two, option three. What are the pros? What are the cons? And this is a military thing. We used to do this as it was called, like, mission analysis. You'd have up the center, around to the left and to the right, pros and cons of each. You do a combat estimate and then you choose one, and that's going to have the best effect overall. And that's what we did. And a lot of people, like you say, they just focus on the wrong shit a lot of the time. And if you're going to plump all your energy into something that's going to be counterproductive, there's just no point in that whatsoever. It's just a futile existence, in my opinion.
No, and to be honest, like, I don't, rightly or wrongly, I don't watch a huge amount of news. I stay up to date with current events, but I don't sit down and like watch the news. So I only found out on the day of, like, when the lockdown announcement was being made. I actually only found out earlier that day that that was happening. So I think there's some people knew about it days in advance, and that's fine. So I kind of just found out that we were having an address to the nation and that he was going to announce another national lockdown. And I was like, oh man, bullshit. Like,
really American.
But yeah, it was exactly that. I was like, oh man, bullshit. I call bullshit. I don't want, I'm like, I've literally just got back in the fucking gym.
I know. It's frustrating.
Like, bearing in mind, I live in Liverpool. This is where people were fucking going nuts because it was the first place in the whole country to go into tier 3. We literally fought. My friends who have gyms around here fought. It went to Parliament. They decided to, like, turn it all over and let the gyms reopen. So the gyms have been in a huge battle up here, and they have fought the government, and they won.
They won.
And then literally days later, like, they've been told they have to close again. So
So really, it was proving a point at the time, but at the same time, what's been the outcome of that? But what you were saying, I meant to answer your question a minute ago when you were saying about, for people that are listening to this, that might be thinking, how do I think more positive? How do I get myself in a better mental state?
Yeah.
And he says, well, what's the easiest way to delete, distort, and generalize, and have that more of a sort of focus feeling on something that's going to be benefiting your life. And it comes down to the simple fact of what you focus on. It is as simple as that. So it's almost like elaborating what I said a minute ago. But when people are asking the question, well, how do I think this way instead of that way? It's because you have to look for other sources. So there's one way to do that, which is obviously internal thinking, which coming from someone like yourself, you are quite well versed, I would say, in the art of things like meditation, mindfulness. Again, this isn't something that you just know. This has to be a taught and learned practice. You can't just meditate, right? I find meditation really hard. I'll be honest with you. I find it really difficult to do. It's something that I'm not very good at.
Yeah, but it's like
And,
training. It
and
would be like trying to sit down and do like a half-hour meditation would be like you taking a newbie trainer into the gym and trying to put them through like I don't know, like GDC.
giant sets.
Yeah, it'd be like trying to take a newbie and to do 10 by 10.
Yeah,
Like they die. They couldn't cut, their bodies aren't ready, their minds aren't ready, they're not conditioned to be able to do that yet. So like for me, things like mindfulness and meditation start very basic. They start right at the
absolutely. And this is the thing, going back to the fact that people have a choice. So if there's people listening that are thinking, I really want to change my mindset. And I got a lot of this with clients that approach me to say, I got a lot of clients actually that they don't want to focus just on getting their bodies in shape. It's a lot of it's down to mindset.
But that's great because that's where people fail.
Right? So because if you master that, you can master pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, people, they have too many moving parts in life. So a lot of the thing, they've got too much shit they don't need. So if you look at someone typically, you think about these things, right? These are classic mistakes. You ask somebody that's unhappy, unhealthy, what do you do in your daily life? What are the reasons why you're not where you are right now? What do you use as excuses? And they'll use shit like, I don't have time. And I've heard this so many times. I can't find the time. If you were to get that person's phone off them and say, give me a look at your phone and let me see your screen time, it would be like 6 hours a day, right? Yeah. If you get time to sit on your phone and look at meaningless shit that's probably just feeding your mind bad energy, if you get time to do that, you get time to spend 30 minutes getting yourself fit. I don't give a shit.
Guaranteed, they are not aware that they spend that long on their phone.
They're not. This is what I mean.
They will be completely oblivious to the fact that they are actually wasting 6 hours of their whole day every single day on their phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a complete lack of awareness in that.
So, and there's so many resources. I mean, you think about this, right? Every single workout I program for clients,
yeah,
you could find every single exercise with that number of sets, that tempo, those reps, pretty much in a similar format. It's all out there. A lot of it's free.
Yeah.
A lot of it's very low end cost. You can download a PDF from any trainer you can think of. They've usually got loads of free shit to give out. Now that's a system to follow that will get you results. So why do people not get the results then? Why do people still fail? But it's because they don't have someone keeping them there. They don't have themselves. They're not accountable to themselves. They're hoping for something to be the fix. They're hoping for someone to be the savior. So if I download this program, that's my answer. If I read this book, that's my answer. But the thing is, there's so many free resources out there. It has to start with something. So if someone's really unhappy and they feel they need to change, they feel like they need to shift their mindset, shift their focus, I would say to them, my advice, they don't need to go and spend loads of money. They don't need to go and spend thousands of pounds on a coach. They just need to start doing something other than what they're doing already. So if they're not doing anything that's feeding their mind on a daily basis, so if they're looking at bad news, if they're surrounded by negative people on their Facebook feed, and a lot of people have people on their Facebooks that are doing them no good whatsoever. They're just toxic people that spout shit on a constant basis. So you got to learn how to use the unfollow button with great ease. So unfollow people. If you see something that you think is making you feel bad, delete. Get rid. Stop following that person. Stop looking at that news channel. Delete the apps off your phone that you don't think are really improving your life, right? So get that time back. The time that you would use looking at this shit, start looking at something on YouTube. That you could start with something as simple as motivational videos. It could start as something as simple as, looking at people like Jim Rohn or Les Brown, Tony Robbins, classic motivational speakers and coaches that will give them positive messages. So start feeding your mind on a daily basis. It could be podcasts. It could be something like this. If someone's listening to this now and it's given a bit of an insight, then brilliant. But then start off with the basics and do it consistently. Every single morning, get up, move, listen to something that's going to feed your mind the right information to set you for the day. Then from that information, actually use it. Like we said earlier on, knowledge is power, but knowledge is only power if it's used and shared. So utilize the practices and be consistent with some things. Start with one thing every day, whether it be moving, whether it be listening to a podcast or a motivational video. It can start with something like that. Then read a book. Then buy maybe a box set of something. It could be a disc set or a downloadable series. That's what will then start to change the way someone thinks. And you find that if that's a start point, it's the pilot hole for everything else. Then other things will start flowing in. And before you know it, you'll be like, I'll be living in a fucking trance most of my life. And now I've got this new way of thinking. What was I thinking all these years? And that's what a lot of people do. That's what I did. There's a lot of my past that was very much negative mindset based. Even though I was doing positive things and good things, there was a large proportion of my life I was genuinely unhappy to a point in my own mind. And it wasn't until I started learning about the things I've been talking about today in this podcast, until I started to learn about these things and dissect things like human behavior, why we do the things we do. It wasn't until that point I started to get real peace of mind and clarity on other things, which has then led me to have, the mindset I have today, which I consider pretty fucking solid.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of the things I love most about you is your view on life, how you approach things, the way that you help people. I know that you can see a path for people and how to help them the best way to help them achieve, whatever it is that they've been struggling with. And, like what you're saying, I spent years of my life being really unhappy and living in a really, I think I did feel like a bit of a victim. I felt like, it wasn't until I hit like a real bottom, like a real rock bottom of how I was feeling and what I was dealing with and coping with in my life, where I was on my knees and had no choice but to find another way. And I think that that is the same for many, many people, but let lockdown be your rock bottom. Let this be a fucking rock bottom and let it be the golden opportunity and teacher to elevate yourself and grow and become a better person. I spent my childhood in a very, unsafe, unhealthy environment. And I was dragged kicking and screaming from Southern California to the armpit of East Lancashire. Talk about feeling like a victim. I know this is going to be like a first world problem, but at 14 years old, when you've grown up in Newport Beach, California, to be told you're moving to like, an old mill town in the middle of the northwest of England, I remember feeling like I was so hard done to, and I couldn't believe like what my mom was doing to me. I was so angry. I felt like such a victim. And I spent like the next 5 years of my life like behaving like a victim, like I'm retaliating. It was awful. But it wasn't until I was diagnosed with my brain tumor that I started to have a slightly different view on life. Even when I was told I had the brain tumor, I was a bit like, well, this is shit. So like, not only have I been through everything that I've been through so far in my life, and I've been dragged over here, now I've got this inoperable brain tumor and I'm not going to live to see 30. Anything else?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw at me? I remember saying to my mom, who the fuck did I kill in a past life? I was like, I must have really caused some carnage. If this is the shit I'm having to deal with this time around, like I really wronged somebody at some point and I just don't remember it. Like something bad. If you believe in karma or you believe in anything like that, I was like, I fucked up big time. Somewhere I hurt someone real bad because of this is what I'm having to deal with, and I was in that kind of mindset. Bearing in mind at the same time, I was also, a lot of things happened in that period of time around me being sick. And I was in a really abusive and toxic relationship, and I gave birth to my daughter, and that was like, although beautiful and completely changed my life, it also nearly killed me. It nearly killed her. Like, we were both in very, it was a very difficult time physically. It was a difficult time mentally and emotionally. And my family also had lots of other things going on, within that. So there was all these things happening, and I'd spent so much of my life in that kind of victim mindset, feeling like all of this is happening to me. Like, woe is me. Life's not fair. What did I do to deserve this? It's not fair. Exactly like what you were saying right at the beginning.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point where you're on your knees because you're like, do you know what? It's not fair, but I also can't keep living like this.
Yeah.
I can't live feeling completely powerless and out of control and feeling like everything is happening to me. Like, I just remember feeling so tired and drained and not wanting, like, I just couldn't see the light. Like, I couldn't see the way out. I couldn't see how I was ever going to feel better. And if someone had said to me, like, how do you want to feel? I don't know if I could have even answered that question at that time, because I just knew I didn't want to feel how I felt. Like you said, I probably had a list
You know what you don't want.
on my arm about how I didn't want to feel, but I didn't even fully understand what positive feelings I could have anymore. Like, I'd completely lost touch of that side of myself, and I think with something like, that might sound a bit extreme, but I think there are people who are feeling that kind of extreme at the moment, because everything that they've identified themselves with, whether that be their career, their families, training, being at the gym, being physically active, like, whatever they've placed their worth in and their identity with, they might not have access to that at the moment. And so they now need to create a whole new identity. And at the moment, they might be feeling quite low and like life is a bit unfair. And you know what? Life is unfair and shit happens. And it happens to everybody. It doesn't just happen to me. It doesn't just happen to you. Like, this does happen. And I know that for me, the only way that I was able to get out of that was to start to focus on accepting the reality of my situation.
Mm-hmm.
Just accepting, this is where it's at right now. This is what's happening right now. What do I have control over? What do I not have control over? The only thing I actually have control over is myself. How I choose to respond, react, or not react. I think reaction is a very dangerous word.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the reaction that causes the problem, isn't it? So it's, for me, it was very much about, what do I have control over? How can I take control over myself and my own decisions and my own behavior, taking full and I think that's what you were saying. That was what kind of led me to go on that little bit of a rant, is that being able to take full responsibility
Mm-hmm.
of my life, of where I was at, what was happening, and taking full responsibility of my own behavior. It was less about taking responsibility for what was going on around me and more about taking responsibility for how I was behaving and the choices that I was making, and then how that was impacting what was going on around me.
Yeah.
And like you said a while ago, which I think we touched on, but didn't really go deeper into, was once I'd accepted and realized that all I had control over was myself, and I could take full responsibility for how, for my actions and my choices, I had to learn then to be able to filter the positive stuff back through, because like I said, I'd lost complete connection with what the good feelings were. Mm-hmm. If you'd have asked me, what is this new identity that you want? Who is it that you want to be? How does that person feel? I wouldn't have even been able to tell you that, because I was in such a dark place.
Yeah. You can't see the way out at that point, can you?
No, because that's what I was saying, is that awareness has almost been clouded, and I feel like it gets blocked. So when you live in that like victim mindset, you block any goodness, any positivity. You can't even start to like associate or connect yourself with the good feelings, because you're just living in that like negative shit. And that's where I was. That's how I felt. I mean, that was a really long time ago. I was in my like very early 20s, but the number one thing that got me out of that was exactly what you said a while ago, and that was gratitude.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody saying to me, I want you to make a gratitude list every single day from A to Z. Now, I think you and I, like, if you were working with clients, I'm presuming that the list is like, you know, write 3 things or 5 things or whatever, you know, it's like quite small.
A couple of things, yeah.
Right? So you just write a couple of things that you're grateful for. So again, you can start with something really small, but I remember this person saying to me, you write a gratitude list every single day from A to Z. Mm-hmm. Now that's a big list. That's 26 things.
That's huge.
However, there were days when I felt so low that the only thing I was grateful for the A was air, mm-hmm. you know, or B, it was just to be able to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, like C, I might have been grateful for coffee. D, you know, like these were very low budget things that I was grateful for.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's not about the value of the thing in a general sense, or a perceived value of a cup of coffee. Like you say, it's in the practice. It's in the habit of doing the practice.
Yeah.
Which is to be grateful, because like they say, you can't be grateful and angry, pissed off at the same time.
No, but let me tell you right now, like for anyone listening, you might like kind of stub your nose at the concept of writing a gratitude list and think, well, how's that going to help me? And I can tell you right now, when I sat down to write a gratitude list for the first few weeks, I couldn't even think of anything.
No. Yeah.
That is a sad state of affairs. When you can't even think of anything that you're grateful for, when actually once you start, that's why you have to start so small and be like, well, today I'm just grateful that I woke up this morning.
Yeah.
Or today I'm grateful that I got to talk to my mom on the phone. Or, you know, because actually a couple of my friends' parents are dead and they can't do that. You know, like sometimes you just have to get real small and real specific. And then other times it can just be like, you know, I'm just like, you know, I'm grateful I woke up. I'm grateful that I had a healthy meal. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. I'm, you know, whatever it might be, like we can make it as broad or as specific as we want. But I remember at the beginning having to force it.
Yeah.
Like almost having to make stuff up until I believed it.
It's like that learned behavior again. It's like the skill set. Like I was saying, making something conscious to unconscious. That's where the practice is. It's like, again, look at the example of lifted weights. And I always remember, in fact, I think it was something that Phil Learney, who's a good friend of both of us, I believe. Phil Learney, at one of his seminars I went to years ago, he used this when he was teaching coaches how to introduce clients to the gym, for example. You've got classic examples of someone who's penny pinching, going, well, I can't really afford much personal training, but I will come and see you once a week. So then the trainer then thinks, okay, I don't want to lose a client. I want this person to pay me money. I'll help them out. They can only make it once a week. So then they see them every single week, once a week, in the hope that they're going to get better at a skill. But in reality, it's better to go, I tell you what, what's your budget over the next 12 weeks? Well, find that budget and condense it down to the next few weeks. So let's do that over a 4-week period or a 3-week period. And we'll train every single time you come to the gym. I'm going to coach you. And if you use the example of 2 people like you and I, who want to learn to play the guitar, and we both have the same budget and the same amount of lessons for that budget. So let's say we have, if it's £30 a session and we have 20 sessions, we both get £600. You spend it spread out. So you get a lesson once a week, and I decide to get a lesson 3 times a week. Who's going to learn how to play the guitar quicker?
Yeah, you definitely.
Well, me, right? It's the same amount of energy and financial investment, but it's more focused in a more abundant fashion. So it's the volume of which you do something, not, it's like habit building as well. So it's been proven that how long does it take to form a habit? There's this whole bullshit that it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's just because someone said it once and people just pass that on. Well, it doesn't really, it depends on the person, depends on the frequency. It's not.
And it depends on the habit.
Depends on the habit, but it also depends on how often you want to do that habit and how committed you are to that new habit.
And
And that
how
could be eradicating a bad habit,
emotionally,
it could be implementing a new habit. But if
yeah.
you do it more, then you're going to take less time to implement a new habit. So things like gratitude, go back to what you were saying. If you can start in a most intense fashion like that, I mean, that's not the way I would want to do it because it's very intense, but it's sure as hell going to get you more used to it quicker.
But one of the things I used to do, and again, this might be something I don't necessarily recommend someone going away and doing a gratitude list A to Z every day for the next 28 days necessarily. You know, you can give it a whirl. It's something to definitely have a go at. But you know, if you don't want to go that big, you can definitely just start with picking 3 things.
Yeah.
And you know, doing it in the morning, doing it at night. I used to do it morning and night, just as I woke up and just as I went to bed. You know, pick 3 things, pick 3 things. You know, like that would be my kind of like quick go-to. What I did when I first started doing it was I did it on my own, and then I realized actually this is something I can do with my daughter. And
Yeah.
at the time, my daughter was very young. You know, maybe like 4. She was like 3 or 4, and it actually turned into a really nice like family bonding experience where I then got to teach my daughter about gratitude, and we got to learn how to do it together. And it, because we did A to Z and she like just started learning, it was also like a bit of a learning thing, you know, learning to read. You know, so it was kind of like a bit of a learning thing for her. And it gave us something where we got to think about positive things together.
Mm-hmm.
And like I will always remember that time that I spent with her every night before we went to bed. And that was part of her like bedtime routine. So I think part of that is like not only is it something that you can do for yourself, but doing something like a gratitude list like that with a family member is also a really nice
Absolutely, yeah, because then they
bonding
understand it.
experience.
There's nothing worse than this is the beauty of things like peer groups. This is like one of the most important things I think is getting yourself connected to people who are driving towards the same thing. It's a bit like that saying that I put up on social media the other day that got some traction. It was about if you continue to hang with the crows, you'll never soar with the eagles, you know, and it's so true.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than being the only person that's maybe got intentions or practices or belief systems in place that no one else shares around you. Hence why a lot of people need to connect to an online group, or it could be a business group, a coaching group. This is something that I do, in fact, with my clients. One of the most profound changes I experienced as a coach when I started to use a leverage system and put everyone in the same group, because everyone's in the same page. They're being mentored by the same person. Yes, they've got different goals, but they're all on the same page, and they've got the same mindset development going on. They've got the same strategies being taught. One other thing I want to say as well when it comes to journaling is it can be an overwhelming prospect for a lot of people. So there's too many of these people out there, and normal everyday people are the worst for this, right? I know a couple of people I can think of. One guy in particular, in fact, I'm not going to say who it is, but there's a guy who I know who he posts things on Facebook, and it's things like, "That's me, my morning routine smashed." And then he'll list his morning routine. It's like, "What fucking time did you get up?" 1 o'clock. It's like they end up with this like 4 hour morning routine. I'm like, that's just a perverse form of procrastination, right? You're just ultimately doing all this shit because you're putting off the shit you have to do. And that's almost like a weird, perverse, like I say, a form of procrastination when they go, I must meditate for an hour, then I must write down 10 things I'm grateful for, then I must plan my day. And it's like, well, why don't you just get on with shit that's going to actually move your life forward and keep this stuff effective but minimal? So I always say, look, it's a bit like passing the passage of information when you're teaching someone something. Make it as long as is needed, but as little as possible, as short as possible. You know, to get the information across to achieve the result, as much time as is needed, but as little as possible, because otherwise it's wasted and it's spilling out garble for the sake of it. So when it comes to journaling, I think it's there's a bit of a sweet spot in the middle for most people, and some people like different ways than others. So I tend to be one of those people who I follow a very all-in-one system. So I have a journal that I use for most of these. I don't like a separate gratitude journal and a separate other thing. I don't have that. I have a system that I follow on a daily basis, which is pretty much the next day is planned the night before. there's a rough schematic for the week on the Sunday. Then each day is more detailed. So it's about planning the day, three things you must absolutely do the next day. So this was obviously one of them today for me. 3 things you must do, 3 things you're grateful for, a diary section to then schedule these things in, give it a time, and then some sort of score sheet at the end of the day where you can say, okay, what am I grateful for? What could I have improved on for tomorrow? What can I improve tomorrow? How would I score myself in this, and this? And it's having it in a way that you really, really summarize these things so that it can be something that's not going to overwhelm you or something you're not going to dread. So if you've got this massive evening routine and then a massive morning routine, if you go in tired, it can become a bit of a chore to then do these things. It ultimately makes you feel like you failed because you can't get around to doing it because it's going to take a lot of time. So I think it's something that people need to be mindful of. Don't get overwhelmed by looking at someone on Facebook or Instagram who's boasting about some fucking 4-hour routine they do in the morning and then thinking to yourself, oh, maybe that's why I'm failing in life because I'm not doing that. And that person's obviously where they want to be because they're doing all this shit. That's what I have to do. But the thought of it just daunts me. And then I've got to work out on top of that. Then I've got to feed my kids. I've got to go to work. Before you know it, what happens? Nothing. Because complexity is the enemy of execution.
Yeah.
So if something's too complex, it kills action. It's one of the things that stops people most. They overwhelm themselves by overthinking everything and thinking everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to have fine details. Instead of just doing something, it's better to have, it's like that old saying as well, is a good plan executed now with extreme violence is better than a perfect plan executed next week.
Yeah.
You know? So just fucking move and do something. Start.
Yeah. When you don't just do something, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like
Absolutely
any kind of progress, like progress, not perfection. Just
Absolutely, yes.
do something positive for yourself that will help, impact your life in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, we've covered so much already, like in this whole little lockdown special. And I do hope that it's been really helpful for people, and that even if there's only, we've covered so many different aspects and so many different topics. If you just take one thing away and can implement that in your day tomorrow and every other day for the next 28 days, it's going to have a positive impact. What I would say is that, especially, like I was saying before, when they did the announcement about lockdown, I knew that announcement was coming out a couple of hours before it did. And my initial reaction was like, oh man, like, fuck this. Like, want to get back. Well, I just got back in the gym. Like, I don't want to be locked down again. To be fair, the way that I've built my life off the back of the first lockdown, my life isn't really massively impacted by the second lockdown. But that was because my response to the first lockdown was, how do I now need to structure my life to still be like the best, feel exactly how I created a new identity based around, if life changes completely and never goes back to the quote unquote normal that we had before, how will I still thrive? Like, how am I going to feel like the best version of myself? How am I going to achieve that? And I feel like I've now built my life around that. So this second lockdown hasn't had as big an impact on me. Except I don't like being told I can't go to the gym, and I don't like the idea of I love meeting my friends for coffees, and again, these are like real first world fucking problems. These are not like big deal things. There are people dying out there. There's actual hardship happening out there. One of my last podcast guests has stage 4 bowel cancer. So to him, lockdown's the least of his fucking worries. Like he's today, while we're talking, he's sat having his 5th round of chemo in this chemo cycle. So for him, lockdown is nothing.
It's perspective, isn't it?
Right. It's totally about perspective. Yeah. But for me, like, my initial reaction was like, oh, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not happy about it. But then, a few minutes pass and I'm like, well, I know I'm going to be okay. Somehow, like, I have faith that I will find a way through this and things are going to be just fine. So how can I help other people from feeling like they're alone,
Yeah.
you know, all those pain points we were talking about, the isolation, the loneliness, the decline in your fitness and your health, or your mental health, your sense of purpose, feeling a bit lost with your routine and your structure, and feeling out of control and powerless. Like, how can I help people? Because I don't feel like that. But that's because I've spent a long time working on that, you know, and having a different approach to my life.
Subconsciously now, like I said earlier, the example with the basketball, the rugby ball, that's equivalent to the way you think now. And as the same as myself as well. When it comes to the moment that you need it most, that relentless practice through years of your life, when you need it, that's when it's there. It shows up and it's there to protect you in your mental state because of that practice.
And that's where that resilience is built. You know, like when I first started trying to write that gratitude list and I couldn't think of one thing to put on it, when I look back at that woman to the woman I am now, who I have nothing but just like unbridled gratitude for absolutely everything. Like, I love that quote by Albert Einstein, where it's like, you can either view life like everything is a miracle or like nothing is a miracle, or like it's like one of the, you know, it's like nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. And my natural default setting is that everything is a miracle, even when everything's upside down and not going how I want it, and I'm hurting and there's pain. Like, I am always looking for the opportunity to grow through that, and what can I learn from this, and how can I, and that sometimes that means I just have to sit in the pain and discomfort for, you know, a little while and accept that that's how I feel right now, and that I know that it will pass. And the thing that like actually became really overwhelming to me when they made the announcement was, people need help right now. There's going to be people who have heard that announcement and they're really going to be struggling. And what can I do? What have I learned? What are my gifts? What can I be? How can I be of service and help people? So I very, very quickly went to work on trying to put together a kind of lockdown 2.0, 28 days, just to like give people, exactly like you said, a bit more like laser focus to help them get through each day in a more positive mindset. And
use this opportunity. And the other thing as well, we have history to give us clues here. So if someone is currently dreading this next lockdown because last time they went into lockdown, they failed to eradicate bad habits, they actually got worse. And as a result of that, they got unhealthy, unhappy, and out of shape. They'll be going into that thinking, oh my God, here we go again. This is going to happen again. Use this as your second chance, second chance to actually prosper through this and not fall into the bad habits that you did last time, and actually be proactive and not reactive, and just don't sit and hope, but actually get off your ass and focus on something else that's going to actually make you a better person at the end of this.
Yeah, because like you said, it was a choice. Like Boris didn't tell you to stop moving altogether and eat pizza every night.
No.
He just said you can't go out and see your family right now, or like you can't go, you have to work from home. We all still have freedom of choice on how we spend our time within that scenario. So it does just mean like taking some real responsibility and having a bit of a rethink and a bit of a reset with the mindset. And if we can help people just with this podcast and with the Lockdown 2.0 program about being able to really help people kind of focus their minds, get a little bit more acceptance, take some control, and feel a little bit more empowered to make better choices, to thrive through the lockdown as opposed to just surviving. I think some people are going into it going, God, I just hope I survive this lockdown. And yes, I hope you survive it too. And if that's your measure of what is going to be a success coming out of this, that's okay as well. Mm-hmm. But I'd love for people not to be falling backwards and just getting worse and feeling completely alone. Reach out to me. My DMs are open for anyone who's really struggling. Contact me. I'm going to put like this course. I've literally got 2 days to build it. We were told the other day, we're going in lockdown. I've got 2 days. So is it going to be like Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny, fully polished with loads? But no, it's not. And I'm not about to sit here and peddle you that that's going to happen, because that would be bullshit. So, but what I will promise is that it will give you 28 days of support and positivity and helpful hints and tips on how you can thrive through this. And you will be part of a community, exactly like you said, Lindsay, where you can create that safe space of a group of people where you're not on your own, who are all going through the same thing and striving for the same kind of positive path forward. I also need wonderful people, knowledgeable people like yourself to come on and talk to these people. So would you be willing to come and do a one-off, like, little live mindset session with them?
Absolutely, of course, it would be my pleasure, obviously.
That would be incredible. I would love that. People
And
would get so much.
by the way, just to give you a little bit of reassurance, when I actually went to Date with Destiny, Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny, and apparently he tells a story there, and he actually wrote Date with Destiny in about 17 hours. So he created that come from a really, really responsive shit time and shit experience of his life that actually resulted in him writing Date with Destiny. There's a story behind it. It's to do with him being temporarily fucked over by somebody, but he got so angry and so pissed off with not knowing why people do the things they do. So it's all about, that whole event is about self-discovery and discovering why you do the things you do and have done up to this point in life. And that actually backed him into a corner where he dug deep and actually ended up creating Date with Destiny in a day.
That's outrageous.
And obviously, he obviously polished it as he went, but
yeah,
that's how it started many, many years ago.
I bet it's had a number of incarnations from when he very first delivered it to what it's like now. Like, that will be, knowing the kind of man he is, that'll just be constantly evolving, right? As he evolves.
Of course. It's like my program, my Modern Warrior program. It's not been going. I've been coaching for years, obviously, a long time. But the Modern Warrior program is taking on that identity, because that's the message that I'm getting across with the men who I coach. Mm-hmm. But as that goes, that will evolve, and it'll evolve one lesson, one video at a time. And a year from now, it'll be a far more bolstered out program, but the content will be pretty much the same with added extras.
Well, I think there's quite a lot of men that listen to this podcast, and I would just implore any of them listening, if you have felt stuck in any way or have something in mind that you really want to achieve, any goals that you feel like you need some help and coaching with, like, Lindsay's definitely the guy to go to. Definitely. How to teach men to be men. Yeah,
that's pretty much what it's about. And it's not in an egotistical fashion. It's about men understanding how real men actually live and operate for true fulfillment and happiness.
Absolutely. And I think the world is desperately in need of that. I think it's desperately in need of men stepping and standing strong in their masculinity and being able to bring that to the world, and for women to be able to step and be strong in their femininity as well. That's not to be like, I'm not genderizing and being like exclusive or anything like that. The reality of it is that the universe is made up of feminine and masculine energy. And I think people are just afraid to stand strong in those out of fear of being judged or condemned, and that's bullshit. Like, that's just not where we're at.
I'll be the first to say I'm trying to fix what's fucking wrong in the world right now. And that is, people are too scared to live in line with the true values. Absolutely. Out of fear of being judged by others, which is bullshit, as you say.
It is bullshit. Oh, Lindsay, I have enjoyed this so much. I really
This has been absolutely epic. I've loved this podcast. I have.
So of all of your podcasts that you've been a guest on,
I can't discredit any of them. Come on.
No, but you could, like,
you're the best looking host that I've actually spoke to.
Oh, you're too charming. Stop it. Making me blush.
I mean, the rest have been men, but no, but don't take that as an insult.
Right. Mean, well,
if they were all women, you'd still be the best.
Well, nice save there, Lindsay, because gone down in my estimation ever so slightly.
Oh, I think you're a beautiful human being.
No, well, thank you. That's ditto, right back at you. Well, I can't think. I really can't. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say it's been an epic podcast. It's been really, really good. I've really enjoyed this because it's just been a real nice flow to it, and I think there's a lot of value, a lot of nuggets in this that people can really, really take now and implement now as well, which is always, I think it's always a good thing, that it's not about just let's go on a podcast and just talk about me or you and just this is how great I am type of thing. There's a lot of podcasts like that out there I don't really tend to connect with, but when it's purely, this is purely contribution based from both of us, obviously, and I think it's really important that people listen to something like this now and instantly feel more empowered, happier, with the feeling of they've got a sense of purpose that they can actually do something immediately with, whether that be going for a walk, whether that be implementing a gratitude journal, whether it be reaching out to one of us. There's action steps there straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about it. There and talk all day till the cows come home. But for me, there's nothing more frustrating than listening to a podcast that has, say, like a topic title on it. And I listen to that hoping that I'm going to get something that I can go away and apply and implement to improve my life. And actually, I don't hear one thing that I can take away and actually actively go away and do. It tends to just be a lot of chat around the issue, around the issue, as opposed to like, okay, now I'm more aware of the issue, but how do I work through it? How do I make a positive change in that area? And so that's one of the things I'm really particular about with this podcast is I want people to step away. And if they can only to even just one thing, I think if someone re-listened to this podcast a few times, they would take different things away every single time. We've covered so much.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we've definitely given people actionable knowledge that they can go away now and apply.
Yeah, very simple, actionable knowledge, of course.
And exactly. So if anyone is looking for, lifestyle or mindset coaching, Lindsay is definitely the guy to get in touch with. I will, in the description, there are links on how to connect with Lindsay. Do you want to tell people how to find you on Instagram? Is that probably the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Instagram is my handle is the Lindsay Bruce. Obviously, you'll put the spelling of that up so that people can actually get the right.
I'll put a link to it.
But at the moment, my new website is actually just about to be launched. It's still in the in the build process, but that will be lindsaybruce.com. It's not ready yet, so there's nothing there for people to search for. But that will be coming very, very soon as well. But at the moment,
I can add that link into the description at a later date. So we'll just make sure you're super contactable. By all means, if anyone is struggling or wants any help or is interested in jumping on the Lockdown 2.0 program, do just send me a message and I can stick you on the list. And there will be a link available by Thursday morning for you to sign up to that. I just want to thank you, Lindsay, for taking the time to sit down and share all of your knowledge and experience with me today. I've loved it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It's been a long time coming. This has actually been shorter than our usual conversations as well. So
yeah, well, I don't know if anyone's been able to know that. I mean, Lindsay and I can probably talk for like 5-6 hours solid and not draw breath. In fact, I think we've done that and gone completely like hypo because we haven't even eaten.
Yeah, need a carb. Yeah.
Like, I just need food because I forgot what we're talking about. No, I genuinely, I can't thank you enough for being on. I want to thank all of the listeners for taking the time out of your busy day to listen today. And I really hope you got something that you can take away and apply in your life and to make your lockdown just a little bit more pleasant. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. If you could leave a 5-star review, I would really, really appreciate it because it just helps us get into the ears of more listeners and change more lives. So until next time, stay strong, my friends.